All right. Today, we are diving into one of the most foundational and honestly, one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of Buddhist philosophy, the first noble truth, what's known as dukkha. So, let's get right into what that really means.
So if you've heard about this before, chances are you've seen dukkha translated as suffering. And, that's not totally wrong, but it can be really, really misleading. The word suffering just makes you think of like intense agony, right? But the actual idea is so much bigger and way more subtle than that.
Okay, here's a much, much better way to get your head around it. Picture a cartwheel, but imagine the axle isn't perfectly in the center. It's just slightly off. What happens? Well, every single time that wheel goes around, you get this constant nagging bump, bump, bump. It's not like the whole cart falls apart, right? It's just this fundamental unsatisfactoriness that's built right into the ride itself. That constant low-grade dis-ease, that is the heart of what dukkha is all about.
So to really get this, the Buddha broke it all down into 3 different levels. Think of it like we're peeling back the layers of an onion to get to the very core of that bumpy ride we were just talking about.
So what are these 3 levels? Well, you've got ordinary suffering, then the suffering of change, and at the deepest level, you have the suffering of conditioned existence. All right, let's unpack what each of these actually feels like.
First up, we have dukkha dukkha. This is the one we all get, no problem. It's the ouch factor of life. This is your headache, it's the grief you feel when you lose someone, the sheer frustration of being sick, it's the hard facts of getting older and eventually death. It's the most obvious, straightforward kind of bump on our ride. Okay, next we go a little deeper, a more subtle layer, viparnama dukkha. This is the suffering that comes from change. Have you ever had that feeling you're in a really happy moment, but there's this little bittersweet part of you that knows it's not going to last? It's that quiet anxiety that a great vacation is about to end, or that feeling of watching a beautiful sunset just fade away. It's the stress we create for ourselves by trying to hold on to things that by their very nature just can't last. And that brings us to the very core, sankhara dukkha. You can think of this as the deep, underlying, existential hum of dissatisfaction. It comes from that background awareness that everything, and I mean everything, including our sense of me, our self, is just a temporary pile of changing parts, both physical and mental. It's not a sharp pain. It's more like a general, nagging unease that just comes with being a thing in a world where everything is constantly changing. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Hearing all this, it's so easy to go, wow, this sounds super pessimistic, kind of depressing, right? But that is honestly one of the biggest misconceptions about this whole idea. The point isn't to be a downer. The point is to be a realist.
So here's the difference, and it's so important. The misconception is that Buddhism is saying life is only pain and there's no joy. That's not it at all, not even close. The reality is, of course joy and happiness exist. They're real. They're just temporary. The first noble truth is simply pointing out that trying to find lasting, permanent satisfaction in things that are always changing, well, that's just setting yourself up for disappointment.
Okay, to bring this down from the philosophical clouds and make it super practical, the Buddha actually pointed to 8 specific universal moments where dukkha pops up in our lives. This really grounds the whole idea in real, everyday human experience. And they cover the whole spectrum. You've got the really obvious ones, right? The trauma of being born, the pains of getting older, getting sick, and of course death. But it also includes those more subtle pains, like being separated from someone or something you love. Or on the flip side, being stuck with what you dislike, the frustration of not getting what you want. And even just the basic, constant load of having a body and a mind to take care of. I mean, these are things literally every human being goes through. And this leads us to a really, really key insight. The whole philosophy suggests there's a huge difference between pain, which is inevitable, and the suffering we add on top of it. It's our resistance to that bumpy wheel, our mental fight with how things are, that actually creates the deepest kind of suffering.
Let's break that down because it's a game changer. Think of it this way. Pain is just a sensation. It's raw data, right? A signal. But suffering, that's dukkha. That's the mental story we wrap around the pain. It's our resistance, our anger, our this shouldn't be happening story. So accepting this truth, it's not about giving up. It's about finally being honest and admitting, okay, this wheel has a bump, so we can stop fighting the bump and actually start figuring out how to fix it.
And that right there is the most hopeful way to look at this entire idea. The first noble truth isn't a final, depressing verdict on life. It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning. It's the very first step on a path forward. This quote just nails it perfectly. The first noble truth isn't supposed to be a bummer. It's like a doctor telling you exactly what's wrong. Think about it. You can't start the treatment, you can't even begin to get better until you accept the diagnosis. It's not a curse, it's a clear, honest diagnosis. And accepting it is the most empowering first step you can possibly take.
Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. If this is the diagnosis of the human condition, then what in the world is the treatment? Well, the answer to that's where the rest of the noble truths come in.